So I've been hearing a lot of people speak about different concepts. Well, I've said not once, but you see, when we are to compare ourselves to the wisdom of the East, you see, someone was wondering on a forum and said, how do I know that I have reached the West world? I, obviously as a Grinch, as the eternal Grinch that I've always been, well, came up with quite a feasible explanation. Well, quite an easy explanation, I could say. So I told him, if you are someone from the East, especially someone who's more sensitive to things and somewhat knowledgeable of certain things, see, you realize you've reached the Western world, the Western society, when you see that suddenly everyone knows literally everything about everything. But funny thing is, when they open their mouths, they don't even know what they're talking about. But for some reason and through whatever means, well, they somehow know literally everything about everything. Yet they never have any idea, any clue what they're talking about. See, many people nowadays are talking about motivation, and I've spoken in many of my videos that it took me 15 years of my life, 15 years of introspection to realize that there is no such thing as motivation. And that motivation is used as nothing else than a means for a lot of people to make a lot of money. Why do you think there's so many so-called motivations for, you know, everything nowadays, right? Because in the Western world, apparently you need motivation for this, you need motivation for that. And guess what? People are selling you meditations for motivation. That is nothing else than a distraction, because you're listening to something, you're having the illusion that you're being inspired to do something, but you only like it because you don't like to do something else, and you're being distracted from doing something else. So you're literally poisoning yourself. I've been looking desperately left and right to try to understand what is it, this alien concept that people called motivation. People saying they don't have the motivation, or people saying, well, I feel so motivated to do this or to do that or to do whatever. And it's like I never felt anything. I've always functioned like a machine. I have to do and complete a certain objective, I will do it, and that's it. In time, of course, as I woke up, I started realizing that some of the things weren't necessarily useful to me, although the mechanical side would still do it, which always was a double-edged sword. Why? Because I could literally count on my mechanical side. I could literally shut down my brain and I would brainlessly do something, okay? It wouldn't be to the highest of my potential, but at least I could rest my mind and, my intuition and certain parts within me, some of them which I never bothered to find out how they work, and I actually promised I'll never find out how they work, but I always saw that, well, they do the things the way they should be. So obviously trusting that was always a point. So when you can do things in a brain-dead way and you can still achieve those, well, that can be quite awkward. It's an awkward feeling for other people. And, I actually ended up being labeled by a lot of people as highly productive. And some of them even wondered, how the heck can I do things that I don't like? I told them I just shut down my mind. And some people say, but I just can't do anything when I shut down my mind. And I told them, see, that is the problem. New Age spirituality has kind of broken all the senses that we should have about wisdom and introspection. Because they are telling you that success is a certain thing, for example. Motivation is a certain thing, when obviously motivation is nothing else than paying your attention to other people. Because in order to listen to their meditations and to whatever they're pitching you, right? Whatever they're hooking you to buy, because obviously everything has to have a value in the Western society, and ultimately the only reason why so-called successful people give you any of their attention is because they want you hooked up to their products. Because obviously you're nothing else than a tool that makes money, and well, a part of your money must be their money as well. Welcome to the Western society where everything must have a price, and where, objects are loved and humans are being used. So, when it comes to motivation and the such, motivation, the way it is portrayed nowadays, it's nothing else than a distraction. A distraction is what I call a drug activity, something that distracts you from the pains of your life, from the idea of doing something, and obviously you will like it because when you are distracted, you become ignorant to the responsibilities that you have to take. And you have an illusion, right? You suffer from the illusion that, well, you don't have to focus on those anymore, right? That's what ignorance means, and that's why ignorant people always suffer. Because they will always do the easy parts, and, well, obviously, their life will always be hard. Truly successful people do the hard things, and that's why their life is, let's say, somewhat easier. You can't say they have easy lives when you have to constantly attend meetings and tend to things for other people, right? Because achieving success is not necessarily having a lot of wealth. Having a lot of money is usually, let's say, the reward that comes with that. See, many people nowadays tell you that you can listen to my motivation, obviously, that meditation you have to buy, obviously, to make $1 million. Why would you waste time listening to a stupid meditation, right? It's nothing else than someone's voice with some dumb music on the background, and it's nothing else than a very good distraction, indeed, but, well, when you're introspective enough, such things simply can't work upon you. See, these little machinations, they can't work upon me because I've got thousands of mini processes in my mind, making sure that, whatever is not mine is simply set aside. Because if I made a rule a long time ago, is that whatever goes through my mind, I am the king of my mind to the best of my potential. Now, obviously, you can't control literally everything, but you see, they tell you have to shut down your mind, okay? And then there are a lot of people who constantly ask, how do I shut down my mind? See, I've made previous videos and I said, you definitely don't shut down your mind, okay? You can reach a situation in which you simply don't take into account what your mind does, okay? That's how you take things. You never shut down your mind. You simply can't shut down the mind. The moment you try, you'll see that you will be simply overwhelmed by 1,000 things. It's impossible to shut down your mind. If you want to do that, well, suicide is kind of the only way, or you simply wait for your physical body to wither and to naturally die, and, well, that's when your mind will shut down. The mind is nothing else than a creator, okay? It is a space that simply creates based on the thoughts that you have put into it, right? You can't create or imagine things which aren't in your experience. Because, well, you may imagine fairies and dragons and the such, but there is a base concept, right? You do have a certain concept which you have experienced once. You may have seen a dragon once, you may have forgotten it, and yes, there is a potential to create a few things a bit beyond what you currently know, but ultimately there always has to be a foundation, because that's what the mind is. It has a foundation, and based on that, it will constantly create. Now, when you become wiser, you simply realize that you don't have to take into account whatever the mind creates. Whatever the mind creates, the problem with most people is they identify instantly with it. If the mind says you are dumb, the mind just repeats everything, right? Everything that you know, that you've put in your mind, the mind constantly repeats. In often cases, it repeats with a different shape and size, and that's why you have an impression that it is a completely new thought. But it is nothing else than the repetition of past experiences, past memories, better said. So it is constantly repeating things. So the problem is, if someone calls you a bad name, you're most likely gonna identify instantly with it. And obviously your mind will repeat that, because the only way your mind can free itself of things is if you allow it to think of those things, and every time they happen, you simply let them flow. You don't create any judgment. Okay, someone said you called you a bad name. Well, it's their problem, not yours, because they were the ones who were pissed, and it's your choice whether you allow them to piss you off or not. Whoever controls you, well, they do it because they anger you, or they fear you, or They make you fear them, right? So there is always an emotional response that is needed in order for someone to control you. Whoever angers you controls you, for example. So when it comes to success, the simplest definition for success is when you turn your environment finally into something that supports you. Because most people live in a toxic environment. Most of the people around us are usually toxic. They just pull us down. They don't want us to win. They always are worried that we will win or we will get greater outcomes than them, and so on and so forth. You know, most of us know this. And in many cases, not all, but in many cases, even your parents, or especially your parents or your closest ones, right? The ones who actually got to know you the best, aka sisters, brothers, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles. Usually it's these people who know you or have had the closest access to you. It's usually these people, not always, but it's usually these people who are, the ones who will try to sabotage you the most. That is why I always tell people there will come a time when you'll have to separate yourself from others. And many people called me that I'm harsh when I said that there is no such thing as titles for me. I said, I function beyond the mind. The mind needs reason. The mind needs concepts. It needs meaning to exist, because if you don't give meaning to the mind, well, the mind can't simply exist. Because the mind, in order to create something, it needs information. And information is physical. If you live beyond the mind, you don't need meaning. You don't need to label things. You don't need to judge things. That's how I function, and to most people it is impossible to perceive that someone simply can tell them something, even if it feels or sounds harsh, but usually that's how the truth is, and they tell them that without any judgment. And some people actually ended up liking that of me, because even if their mind would tell them that, I would harshly judge them because they're used with other people doing so and they expect also that of me, the point is my aura kind of tells them the opposite, right? Because I usually present things, even if they're harsh things, because the truth might be so, but the point ultimately is that I will present the things that people need to hear, right? Not what they want to hear. Because if someone gives you only what you want to hear, well, most likely they're a news presenter, because usually that's what they do. They always give you what you may want to hear, right? That you're the favored citizen and they never lie to you, and they always present you the so-called truth. But the problem is they're kind of way too repetitive, and as I've been saying in previous videos, only lies need to be repeated, because the only way you can support a lie is with further layers of lies. So when it comes to success, success doesn't mean making money. Money is just the outcome of true success, because when you turn your environment into something that supports you, that's when you start having success. As I've been telling people, don't think about making $1 million. What you can do to help 1 million people. And if 1 million people are happy and they donate you $1, well, the point is, okay, you've got your first $1 million. How you can make people give you $1? Well, the simple point is very easy to understand. Obviously, you simply have to give them some help. And some people will feel thankful, especially if you actually come up with something that is life-changing for them. Well, obviously, they might actually donate to you. Now, it's not necessary that you will help 1 million people and you will make $1 million. But the point is, if you provide, right, that will attract some attention, right? And that will attract more attention, because if people like something, they will most likely recommend it to their friends. So success is all about focusing on something. There was a wise person, right, who became successful quite easily. And people knew that that person wasn't the brightest tool in the shed. Someone actually asked them when, they became quite famous enough, and they went, they actually got on air, right, in a live show, and they were asked, how is it that you became so successful, right, but you're not the brightest tool in the shed? And the person thought a bit and said, see, I may not be the brightest tool in the shed, you're right, but I do have one power that most people nowadays don't have. And the presenter asked, well, which is it? And he said, well, I can concentrate on something for more than 5 minutes. And everyone was like, that's it? I mean, sure, in today's society, when you have to focus on 100 things per moment, and you always switch from one thing to another and another and another, and you're always frustrated, you remember something else pops up, and the such. You see, most people can't focus on something for more than 6, 7, let's say 10 seconds at most. When it comes to me and my mechanical side, usually I have to end up as the saboteur because I know how self-destructive I can be. So when I started RPG Maker almost 3 years ago, in the first day my record was 15 hours in a single day. Now imagine that I was 15 hours in that learning things, right? And I was fully concentrated on there. No break, no nothing. From 7 o'clock in the morning till 10 in the evening. I do admit, yes, there were there were a few breaks, like I had to go eat with my family, yes, but ultimately I was still thinking about those things, and outside of that break, well, I still worked and learned how to make texts, how to change colors, and whatever other newbie things I learned. And obviously, minor breaks like, I would drink some water or, eat something really quick. I mean, I'm at least becoming more and more knowledgeable of my needs because I can be fully mechanic and focus 15 hours. I actually did focus 12 hours in one single day without any break, like literally any break, and 12 hours in a row. I focused on that event, I did it, and I was so focused upon it that I forgot to actually save it in the meantime. And the moment I tried to save it, the project crashed and I lost literally all my 12-hour project progress. Luckily, the day before I actually did a backup. It's like, my intuition said do a backup, you ain't done one in a while. Even if I was extremely tired, I did one backup, so I didn't lose much, but I lost the 12 hours of progress, and guess what? The next day, I stood 10 or 11 hours, or almost 12, and again, I did the whole event in a much simpler way, but I still did it. I said I'm not going to bed till I do it. So see, many people can say that they can play their favorite game for hours on end. Well, when you play something that you already know, I don't know if that's concentration or more like playing something in a brain dead way, because when you know something by heart, you don't need to concentrate as much, right? But when you're learning something and you can stay focused on it for so long, well, that's what I may call a bit of success. Some people would ask, but why is it that I have a low salary? Well, you see, whatever I'm creating is not yet helping anyone. It's not improving anyone's life. I'm just showing people that complexity is a good way to go. Because when you do things and you pay attention to so many details, to many people it can be mind-boggling because one single mind can handle 1,000 processes. Well, I know I may be custom built, but that's what technically I like. I like drowning in 1,000 details and handling each one in turn or multiple at the same time. Doing the testing of events in my mind, because by the time I'm working on something, I'm working on other things in my mind. And, physically I can only handle one thing at a time, but I'm already thinking of certain things. And, there's a process for each. And as they go on, there is one point that I'm already imagining how I will insert them, for example, in my project. And as time passes, I already imagine how the player can actually exploit those things, what influence they would have, what resource consumption they might have, and so on and so forth. So I also debug some of the things in my mind, because, well, that's the way I function. Now, obviously, you don't have to be like this in order to achieve success. Now, I may not be making any money out of the big investments that I've done in my projects and the projects themselves, but still, it is something that I'm doing just, to prove myself that I can. So success is something that also preferably implies doing something that you truly like. You'll kind of rarely reach success by doing things that you don't like. Because success is also being heart and mind into something. When your heart and your mind are together in something, that's when you become unstoppable, by the way, because you can't be stopped by something. Because when your mind is in something, well, you have a problem because you're gonna end up on an egotistical aspect. You want to do something, but you do them impulsively because the mind wants so. And the mind can never be fulfilled, right? You achieve something, you are already thinking of something greater. You achieve that, you want something even bigger, right? You reach that destination, you're already thinking and planning how to be even further, right? This is the natural way of the mind and the physical body. It always tends towards absolution. But the problem is, if you're doing it mentally only, you're never gonna reach success and you're never gonna reach fulfillment. When you do it only with your heart, but your mind is not in there, well, you'll always be confused. Now, let's not forget the mind is always confused. This is the actual aspect of the mind. The mind is always confused. That's also what being stoic actually means, right? You know your confusion, you know your limits, but the point is you can't allow other things to simply distort you. Because being strong means allowing the flow of things. You can't control whatever will come towards you in your life, but you can always react how you will respond towards it. Whether you react to it, so you act impulsively, or you simply act in a conscious way. So nowadays, a lot of people will tell you all sorts of things, right? I've been telling people that I don't see anything like motivation. Like I've studied a bit of, actually a bit more, but let's say a bit to sound a bit more modest. I've studied the mind code in a way and certain ways that the mind functions, and I never found anything that would be like motivation. I said that's why I always felt so empty throughout my life. That's why I even labeled myself incompatible with motivation, because I simply couldn't pinpoint its location, its trigger points, and whatever would make me reach such a function. So you see, in life, there are a lot of people who will tell you things. You see, I once told someone, a psychologist, they asked me, what do you think is the greatest problem in this society? I didn't think much. It's like the answer popped out of nowhere. And I said, lack of attention. He looked a bit at me and was a bit, when someone who's 18 years or 20, probably younger, I don't even remember how old I was, it's at least 10, 12 years, so I was at least 18 or 19, if we are to go back in time. But when you look at someone aged 18, usually you would imagine, a self-destructive fuck who doesn't care about anyone and who should actually be in a way like that, because that's how you at least enjoy a bit of life. And, putting a few poisons in your body in a way ain't necessarily bad, well, except when you become dependent upon them. Because at least, if everything is a little poison or a big poison in this world, well, actually they are still a poison. So at least you make your body a bit more used to those. Now, everything in this world is a lack of attention, right? All the problems in this world stem from lack of attention. You may see people who are very successful, but you look at them and you see there is always a pattern. In most of them, there is this pattern that they always have to sell something. They always have to be the do-gooder, right? They always have to fix something. When you want to fix something, you're obsessed with attention because you want to impose something on someone else. That's what happens with fixing, right? The same thing we are doing with the planet. We are trying to fix problems that don't exist. Now some fuckers invent things about climate change. There's no such thing as climate change, for fuck's sake. But guess what? They actually invented a vaccine for that, and guess what? Most likely they will want to make it mandatory like they once tried before. And they already invented a new disease called climate change influences or whatever the fuck. I mean, It's the same people who are buying space, right? You know you can trust them because they've become overnight experts in medicine, and thanks to mass media, all the all the idiots and jerks like everywhere on all the bits of this planet are now experts in medicine and science and vaccinology and the such. It's like, well, we live in a cute society. We should be expecting that. Let's not be haters. I mean, there is no limit to idiocy and lunacy. So why would we actually come up with limitations for that, right? It's like, never mess with the such because they'll beat you with experience. Let them suffer their own pains. Don't give them any attention. And well, they will wither by their own selves. The problem with a sick society is not the sick individuals, it's those who give those sick individuals attention. Because as I said, there is always problem. There is always problems that will stem, and they will always stem from lack of attention. So all this being said, hopefully this video was introspective in a way. I mean, I only presented some points. As I can always say, I'm just an illusion breaker. Obviously, many people will come up with all sorts of things. They will give the wrong type of meaning to things, they will imagine things, and most likely, especially out of a lack of attention, they will end up probably feeling that they are some kind of prophets of this world. Obviously, I can't tell people to, not listen to others, but I can always tell people to become more introspective. Because the more you look inside, you will realize, well, in time, slowly and surely, what fits you and what fits you not. Because we are here to experience our own truths. My truths and my experiences most likely won't be the same with other people. But I have come here to see certain things. And I will tell people how I see certain things. And at the same time, I will also remind them to not take everything I say for granted. Always take everything I say with a grain of truth, right? And a grain of salt. Because there is a bit in both. All this being said, you are appreciated, take care, enjoy life, become more introspective, and you will see that the answers you're looking for, well, they are barely waiting for your discovery of them. Take care, Ferenc on board signing out.